welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and we got another great Kentucky history episode here for you today. With me, our guest is Linda Roberts Sibley. So as far as Civil War, if you were to say Clay County was more Union, more Confederate, or split down the middle?
More Union.
Mhm.
I mean, it was more Union. The Lewises, they were straddled Leslie and Clay. Now they were very Southern, and the Lewises, some of the Robertses, but mostly the Couch, all them, they were for the North,
Mhm.
and so it was more Union. Now the Lewis, I searched for 20 years for my great grandfather's uh, sister, Emily.
Mhm.
She married a Lewis, and I'd searched 20 years. During the Civil War, her husband was sent to that McDonald's penitentiary or prison in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever read anything on that, but it
Mhm.
was as all camps, it was a horrible camp.
Mhm.
And when the Civil War was over, he walked all the way home to Clay County, and
Wow.
he then picked his family up and brought them about 50 miles from where I live. And I did not know it. It took me 20 years to find out.
Wow.
And they're all buried uh, in that county, Palo Pinto, Texas.
Mhm.
And one of their sons was a cowboy with the XIT, and
Mhm.
went with Roosevelt when where did he go? Roosevelt, was it Spanish? No, what was
No,
the,
you're talking about Theodore
yeah,
Roosevelt
yeah.
on oh geez, was it Cuba?
Maybe that's where. But anyway, he knew Roosevelt and all those cowboys on the XIT,
Rough
or a
Riders.
lot of them, Rough Riders. Yeah,
Mhm.
he became a Rough Rider,
Wow.
and so I mean, you can tell I'm a history nut.
Well,
Believe
that's
half this stuff, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Cecil call me, my cousin. He'll
mhm,
call me and he'll ask me stuff, and then he'll show things. He'll say, "Oh, here's a picture of so and so," and he says, "What do you think?" I said, "I don't know where they got that, but that's not it. That's not
yeah,
who they say it is. There's a lot of
mhm,
wrong information out there and
yeah,
everything."
yeah,
And and he keeps saying, "Well, do you get on the internet?" I said, "I don't get on the internet much." I said, "I went to visit people. I didn't have a computer at
yeah,
first." And I said, "You got to go through that and know that. You've got to be able to go to that ancestral.com and look at that stuff and say, 'Oh, that's not right,'
mhm,
and everything."
yeah,
But some people believe it, and that's what they put out, and it's not right. So it just carries on.
yeah,
And
yeah, I mean, people put stuff on there, and if it's not checked, I don't get on there much or anything, but, um, if I don't know if do they have people double checking stuff? I mean, I don't know if that's the case all the
I
time.
don't know how, but I don't tell people I'm wrong. The reason I don't work on the sizemores much, and I can't believe this. A friend, my well, she's kin too, but I have a friend, Polly Begley, that she married a Begley, and she does research, and she's in Suffolk, Virginia, Suffolk County, I think is what it
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
and she'll go up by bus or train to Washington D.C. to work. And one day she called me and she said, "Linda, do you know that you're considered a one of the main experts on the Catawba Indians?" I said, "What?"
Oh.
And she said, "You're in the Smithsonian." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because Thomas Brumer, Brumer was the historian of the tribe. Well,
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s, I started working on the Sizemores. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
take me long to quit, though, because those Sizemores, they know it all. They know their history, and they're not going to change it for anybody. And they're Cherokee, they say. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, uh, I wrote this paper, and I had it published in the Clay County Historical Society, and
Mm-hmm.
I put that that we really weren't Sizemores weren't really uh, Cherokee so much as being Catawba,
Mm-hmm.
and I never got so much hate mail in all my life. I mean, they said, "Are you crazy, woman? You know, what do
Uh-huh.
you know?" And all. But the reason I had based it on that is I had started a conversations with Thomas. He was a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful man, and he has he wrote I don't know 2 or 3 books on the Indian
Mm-hmm.
tribe, and
Yeah.
so I was giving him what I thought was true, and he said, "You're exactly right." See, in 1805, I found uh, George All Sizemore's father in the Catawba Indian tribe reservation,
Oh.
but then
Yeah.
they sold their reservation. Well, they were fighters, and they moved in with Cherokees. So
Mm-hmm.
we probably have some Cherokee, but they moved in. But Cherokees were more passive,
Yeah.
you know, and so they didn't get along. I mean, but I'm sure that there was, children from that
Yeah.
from that deal, but it was bad. And it was interesting. The Catawbas fought for the uh, America. The Cherokees felt sure that the British was going to win, and the Cherokees fought with the British. And when Captain Asher was fighting, he was fighting mostly with the Cherokees.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably that's the reason they bet on the wrong country.
Yeah.
And then probably as it went, of course, what uh, uh, the Trail of Tears, who was that president? Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson. Yeah.
They hate him. I don't like him either.
Mm-hmm.
Because what he did, he promised one thing. The Cherokees, one of the Cherokees had saved his life in one of the battles that he was in, but then he turns on the Cherokees and he does the trail. They go on the Trail of Tears, and just it was terrible what
Yeah.
happened and
Yeah.
everything and stuff. But yeah, I got more hate mail, and then somebody said, "Why don't you work on the Sizemore so much?" And I said, "Because I'm afraid of those people." I said, "I'm a Sizemore on both sides. I go back to George All Sizemore 5
Mm.
different ways, 5, and I'm afraid to work on them.
Yeah. Wow.
Somebody will come down and beat me up."
Yeah.
But so that's
Oh.
where I get some of my stubbornness from.
Uh, oh. So, and this is very typical of Kentucky. After the Civil War, going into the 1900s. Um, when did Clay County get a train, get the railroad?
Now, I don't know about the train. I don't. I know that in the 40s, the roads were terrible and we were still using the creeks
Mm-hmm.
because my family we were right by, our house was right by the creek, and we
Mm-hmm.
kept the big rocks out and moved them to the side so that you could drive up the creek, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything. And uh, then the funny story, people won't believe this. People in Texas don't. But people love for me to come and speak. I'm in every club there is, and I was a region, and so people
Mm-hmm.
are always asked. And I was a judge. Everybody wants the judge, you know. And so, but we went to visit this cousin, and it was a long driveway. And I'm not going to give their name, but anyway, I knew they sold drugs and stuff, but I wanted to visit the mother. So we go in, and they're just as good as can be to me, just wants to feed me. Clay County, Kentucky people want to take care of you. They want to feed you. They want to, and they did.
Yep.
What I wanted to see was the Wolf Pen Cemetery, because one day I got this call from New Zealand, and this guy said he was born in Germany, but he knew he was different than all his brothers and sisters. He was not like them. He was real dark. He loved music. He loved drinking and all this stuff. And but his mother would never tell him who his father was, because he said, I know this isn't my father. And so on her deathbed, or she thought her deathbed, she told him that her father had been a GI soldier from the mountains of Kentucky, and he wanted her to come back with him. But she had heard horrible stories about how bad the Kentuckian living was. It was just as bad as Germany, and she refused to go. So anyway, he said, I hear you're the authority on the Begleys. Do you know who I'm talking about? And I said, yes, he happens to be first cousin to my stepfather, Bert Begley. And he said, okay, will you go? He's dead. He said, I found out that he had died. He said, will you go take a picture of the cemetery for me? So that's the reason I went to visit cousin. So when we get ready to go, she said, now we're not going to go this way. We're going to go through the creek bed. And Mac has this big fancy, he's always got a big fancy dually. We had this big dually, and go out and we take the creek bed, and we travel down that creek bed and then get up and go up to that wolf pen. Well, I can't get to that cemetery, because I don't know how we got there, because it was in the creek bed.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's driving the creek bed, and the rocks are all big ones over on the sides. And he said, I can't believe this. And my husband was a Dallas police officer for 33 years. So you can just imagine what he's doing, what he's saying. I said, well, Mac, this is a getaway. If the cops come, they can all leave and go through the creek bed. I think it's a very smart idea. He said, I've never seen the like in my life. And I said, well, that's just what happens. And so anyway, and that hasn't been that long ago that we just
and you mentioned your grandfather a few times. What year was he born in?
My grandfather was born in 1997, and he was tall. He looked like a Native American. And I was so disappointed that I was this little short, fat thing, kind of like the Irish, but he tall. He was a lumberman. Now, he never did work on coal mines. He was very thin, and he worked he had a truck, and he would do logging. He was a logger, and he hardly ever spoke, but I stayed with them quite a bit. And he was very important to me. And his father was Henry Boyd Roberts, and he is the one that comes through the Dave W. Line and the Melinda Davison that goes back to the Ashers. And I loved him very much. And he died in 1970. And so that's when I started my search. And I went to Ireland to do research. I went to Scotland to do research on the Davisons. I did the research my stepfather when he saw that I was so interested. It was funny because when I started doing it on my family, he asked me, he said, will you do my family? Well, I found out his family was my family. I mean,
Yeah.
of the Begleys, and I did that, and I went to Ireland, and as I took my daughter to when she got her master's degree, we went to England and to Ireland. Now she'd already
Mhm.
been to England for about 3 times because we had sent her in high school,
Mhm.
and but when we got off the boat, we had a rented car, and we're going up the ramp, and she said, "Mother, that man looks just like Grandpa." And he did. He looked just like my stepfather,
Mhm.
And my stepfather loved to dance. He could do the best Irish jig. He could sing that old potato head,
Uh-huh.
and all those old songs. He would do them. And in Scotland, I went to do the Daniel Davison. Well, those people were a little unfriendly, but they're more
Mhm.
stoic, and not as friendly. And
Mhm.
I went to New Zealand to visit my cousin, and they came to visit me. And I went to Australia. I mean, I just everywhere I went, I have family. you know.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool. I mean,
yeah,
well, I mean, not only for vacation wise, but to have that family connection as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yes, I even have family in Belize. I went to Belize,
oh,
and
wow.
I took my sister, and she was so mad at me because I like to see the locals.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't want to go the easy. So I took a slow bus, 8-hour bus, when we could have taken one for 3 hours.
Mhm.
And the people brought their goats in, the natives, and they brought
Wow.
and the reggae music. And she looked
Uh-huh.
over at me and she said, "I'm going to kill you." And so when we went back, she made me pay $150 for a float boat. I mean, not a float boat, a float plane. So
Yeah.
we could go back because she said, "I'm not doing that foolishness anymore." But when I was there, I always try to get someone that knows something about um, plants and different things. And when I was in Belize,
Mhm.
this man took me out in the jungle, and he picks up this red ant, and we're talking plants and different things. And he picks up this red ant, and it's big, and he puts it on my hand and he's or arm, and he says, "This is what the natives do. If the natives cut themselves with a machete," he
Mhm.
said, "they put this ant on there, and it will suture that cut,
Wow.
heal it." And I said, "I never
Uh-huh.
heard of such a thing." You know how we used to do the coal? They would put coal
Mhm.
in the cut, but then
Yeah.
that was kind of bad because you had to really wash it off good because you'd have that coal tattoo. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw a lot of people with that coal tattoo, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And but yeah, I,
That's
I
pretty
told
interesting.
I told my daughter, I said, "I know a little bit about everything, just enough to get myself in trouble." You can get yourself in trouble
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
by thinking.
Yeah.
You got to realize you don't know it all, and
Mhm.
you can always find something new, and you can make mistakes. And I tell my daughter that all the time. When
Mhm.
she took for her PhD, I told her, I said, "Those professors, most of them have not ever been out. They don't even know how to get in and out of the rain because
Mhm.
they've just been going to school all their life." I said,
Yeah.
"You need to understand that." And she kind of took offense because she's kind of educated,
Uh-huh.
uh, and so anyway, she came home though, and she said, "Mother, I know exactly what you're talking about now." And I got a good laugh out of it. I said, "If
Uh-huh.
you don't have common sense, you don't have nothing. It don't matter how many degrees you have."
Mhm.
And I kept telling her that, but I'm very pleased that she's got the degrees. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. But I told her, I said, "A lot of those people in Clay County, Kentucky, with nothing but a high school degree, high school education, knows more than those people that's got those PhDs." And I
Mhm.
really believe that because Clay County's got some really very intelligent people.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
oxycontin though is a bad thing. That was a
Yeah.
bad thing that came in, but you know,
Well, when you're talking about Clay County, um, as a whole, and you mentioned Redbud, but like what are some of the communities around there? I mean, Manchester's the only it's county seat. Is it the only incorporated town?
no, Oneida is a wonderful town, and
Okay.
it had it educated a lot of people. I think the original person was Burns, but the Napiers, my grandmother's people, they lived in the Oneida area. Bullskin, it was one of the branches, Bullskin, and they educated. They have, if you ever go there, they have, I don't know, 3 or 4 really nice buildings. They people could
Hmm.
live there, like if somebody lived, um, um, I can't remember who it was, but there was a boy that wanted to be educated, and his
Hmm.
family wasn't very big on it. But when he got a little bit older, he went there, and you could live there. They had dorms, and you could live there, and you could um, uh, work for your tuition, and everything. And
Yeah.
they did a wonderful job. And the bad thing about it is there's a lot of flooding, and this year has been devastating to uh, the school and also to that community because of
Hmm.
so much. And Beverly, I love to go to Beverly to the Redbird Mission, and Beverly. Uh, and then there is Size Rock. Size Rock was where a lot of my family went to church. And the reason they called it Size Rock, there is a huge rock. And I was very upset the last time I went because it looked like somebody was chiseling on that rock.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, are they trying to take that rock down? If they are, I'm going to protest, you know. Uh, but anyway, that's the reason they called it Size Rock. And then let's see, those are the ones that I go to the most. War
Yeah.
Brand. Oh my gosh. One year, my mother told me to take a ride out of Beverly, out of Redbird, and I take a ride, and we ended up in Timbuktu. But anyway, we were only 5 miles from Manchester, and I didn't realize it. We get up and there's a sign and it says War Branch. And she said, "Oh, Lord have mercy. There's the worst people in War Branch there. It's dangerous here and everything." We stopped at this little, we called them jot it down stores, but just
Hmm.
this little store. The people were just as kind and their kinfolks. But anyway, uh, I told the person, I said, you know, I don't know where I'm going, and I need to go to or I know where I need to go, but I don't know how to get there. I need to go to Manchester. And she looked at me and she said, "You take that road right there to the left for 5 miles." I said, "We're only
Hmm.
5 miles out of Manchester." She said, "Yeah." And so, and of course, Redbird, a lot of people went to school there. And then
Hmm.
Cutchin. Um, I mean, there's a lot of little towns in through there,
Hmm.
and everything. But Manchester was where when you went, you'd go to Manchester and do a lot of your business and everything.
Big time shopping.
Yeah. Now my family, the Ashers, they would travel all day and spend the night. They all banked in Pikesville
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's how the family came down, the river and everything. And but yeah, I mean, there's lots of little towns, a restaurant. But I tell you what, oh, this is a good story. I don't know if you want to keep it or not, but one year, we still put flowers on our graves,
Hmm.
and we still have meetings up there, and
Yeah.
everything. Well, we were going to have a meeting at Bullskin or Oneida, and it's a straight up hill. I couldn't even get up there now. But anyway, my mother and my husband and I went to take flowers. And coming off that hill, there's no place to go to the bathroom, no restaurants, no
Yeah.
gas stations, no nothing, And so I needed to use the bathroom so bad. It was just, terrible. So we go down to Couch Fork, and there is a
Mhm.
huge uh, grocery store there. So I knew there had to be somebody in there that can, but it says no bathrooms.
Uh-huh.
I go in and I said, ma'am, she looked at me. I looked at her. I said, ma'am, I saw the sign that said no bathroom, but I need to use the bathroom. Well, come back a little. My mother told Mac to stop on the side of the mountain, and she just uh, use the bathroom there. And I said, I can't do that. I got cityfied, she said.
Uh-huh.
Because how am I going to wipe? She said, just get a leaf. And I said, in my luck, I can get a poison ivy, you know. But she used it. And so, but anyway, I went in, and the woman looked like a couch to me because she had that beautiful Indian black hair, and she was,
Mhm.
just beautiful women and men, uh, handsome men. But anyway, I said, ma'am, I know you say no bathrooms, but I said, I have been up to the cemetery and I need to use the bathroom so bad. Could I use the bathroom? Now, this is a
Uh-huh.
big place. She looked at me kind of, like, no way, this old woman's going to use the bathroom. But anyway, I said, she finally said, what cemetery? And I said, well, the Napier Cemetery. But I said, I'm kin to the Couches. I'm kin to the Sizemores. I'm kin to the Gays. I'm kin to the Robertses. I'm kin to the Ashers. I named about 10 different lines I was kin.
Uh-huh.
One of those lines worked, and I don't know which one. She told this girl, she said, take her to the bathroom. I go in there. First thing I said is, oh God, I cannot use this bathroom. It was bar none the worst I had ever seen.
Uh-huh.
Ter- Terrible. I said, I can't use this bathroom. And I said, well, I might as well buck up and use it because it is a bathroom. And I
Yeah.
asked God for one. So I
Mhm.
used it and was very careful, you know, and no running water. Well, there must have been water, but they didn't have a sink or anything.
Mhm.
So I go out, and my husband had come in and bought me an RC and a moon pie.
Mhm.
So I said, just as what I need, I'll probably need to go to the bathroom again before I get home. RC and moon pie. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
I got to use the bathroom and everything.
Well, you
That's
you gotta
how,
plan it out
yeah.
on those long, well, mountain trips 'cause, you may not come across one after a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you can't
Uh,
you in Clay County, if you get back in the woods, and you better carry your gun too, and you better be
mhm.
prepared. Um, we got lost, my husband and I did one time, and I said, "Oh Lord, we're in for it." And because a man come out, we pulled in his driveway
Mhm.
to move, go the other way, because
Mhm.
I said, "We're lost." I was looking for a Begley cemetery, and what I would do is I'd log all everybody that was buried in that cemetery, but I was looking for a particular one. And
Mhm.
this mountain guy come in, a mountain looking guy, come out on us, and I didn't see no gun, but I told Mac, I said, uh, "Let me handle this," and because he's got that Texas drawl that'd just irk you sometimes. He's
Uh-huh.
so slow and everything.
Yeah.
I said they'd shoot us before he got out the words. So I
Uh-huh.
told him, I said, well, sir, I'm looking for, I apologize for using your parking, your road, but
Uh-huh.
I'm looking for the Bagley Cemetery. I said, I'm looking for so and so, and my stepfather's a Bagley, and he said, oh, my mother keeps up that cemetery. We're the
Mhm.
Bagleys. And he said,
Yeah.
you want me to show you? I'll take my four-wheeler and show you where it's at.
Uh-huh.
Max, this beats anything I ever seen. If you're a Texan and you come down here, you might get shot. But if you're from here, Clay County, you're okay.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
yeah.
said, you gotta know the people. And I said, the Clay County, they're clannish, just like people in Scotland. You know,
Mhm.
they're like the
Yeah.
people in Scotland, and they've got to know you. You know,
Mhm.
they got to know you, and so that's the reason I use all those names.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned too, you said you called it
Oneida,
Oneida?
yeah,
Or
or they
Oneidas.
call it on. They some people call it Oneida, and then
Yeah.
I call it Oneida. The old, ones would
Yeah.
call it Oneida. Yeah,
So, well, that's as well, yeah, we always called it Oneida,
yeah,
but Baptist Institute,
yeah,
that's the school you're talking about.
yeah, yeah.
As far as other schools, like one-room schools, Clay County have a lot of those.
Oh, yeah. In fact, my mother was valedictorian of her class, and she graduated in '48. And of course, there were so many. Uh, there was need of teachers and everything, and
Mhm,
so she got 2 years. My my grandfather took her to Berea in a
mhm,
logging truck, and her brother, who was in the war, gave enough money for her tuition or what she needed to do. And after that, I think she only did a year, and she started teaching. And I can't remember where she taught, but she taught all those little one-room schools houses. There
mhm,
was, there was Couch Fork School. There was, Bear Branch had a school. They all Big Creek. Big Creek had a good school. I went to Big Creek,
mhm.
and so yeah, there were schools, lots of schools. Because I tell you what, like I said, the Clay County people are intelligent, and from an early time, uh, in the 1900s on, the majority of those people, they wanted their children to have education and have a better life than they had. And so they made sure. My grandfather had 11 children, him and his and my grandmother Martha Abbas, and he wanted all his kids to have educations. And he ended up with uh, one of his sons was a doctor, got his PhD. Uh, Two of them got masters. I mean, the majority of them got education, and he believed strongly in education.
Mhm.
And they went to the schools in Bear Branch and Big Creek. Now, those are elementary because when you even now you go to like Manchester, they bus them over, and you
Yeah.
go over there. Like Big Creek goes, I think, to the, I don't know if they go to the sixth or the eighth grade, but
Mhm.
anyway, they go to a certain time and then they go to the big, to the bigger school and
Yeah,
everything.
the high school.
Yeah.
And I mean, that brings it to my next one, like consolidation, when the school started, forming, um, and I guess, like, how was there a lot of high schools, or did it all just kind of form
No,
into
we
one?
all went to like the main one, like Manchester, Clay County. Now, I think Redbird has a high school, and because I think they only have like they had less than 20 to graduate in high school.
Mhm.
I mean, but most of them all go to Manchester, and I think that's okay
Yeah.
because, of course, they have to bus a long ways. But
Mhm.
like Leslie County, it's Hyden. They go to
Yeah.
Hyden,
Mhm.
and that's where my sister went and graduated from, and a lot of my cousins. In fact, Thomas Sizemore was the superintendent over there, and he's my first cousin.
Mhm.
And but they have good school. I think they have good schools in,
Mhm.
in Clay and the surrounding counties and everything.
Yeah. I think Clay County High School is the only, high school there now. Redbird, because, well, my wife is from Hazard, so we
Yeah.
drive through there, plenty, but I think the Redbird, I don't know if the elementary school there is still running.
Well,
Um,
they closed it, but
okay.
then it was kind of Methodist, that Redbird was Methodist. Well,
Mhm.
now the uh, school system took it over, or
Okay.
they they allowed the Redbird to go in,
Mhm.
and so they do have school there, and it's
Okay.
a beautiful building. If you've seen it, it's
Mhm.
it's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, well, I'm trying to think if I got any more questions.
I probably talked too much, but
Oh,
as you
no.
can tell, I really enjoy the history of my family,
Mhm.
and I wrote for Clay County Historical Society for, well, since 1974. They
Mhm.
started that. And I'm on a big project right now. It's actually for Leslie County, but Clay County, their historical society is wonderful. And they did a military book.
Mhm.
And I put in about 25 people in there.
Yeah.
There was individuals that worked on it. And uh, James Davison is the one I think that put it together, and he's a super nice guy, very intelligent on the history of the Clay County,
Mhm.
and so uh, it's a wonderful book, and it got me thinking. A cousin of mine asked me if I would do. I did a Vietnam book because my husband
Mhm.
went to Vietnam, and I did a book on Vietnam, and she saw it, and she said, "Do you think we could do one on Leslie County?" And I said, "Yeah, I can use it kind of like what James did on in Clay County." And
Mhm.
honestly, Clay County has probably got one of the best, if not the best, historical society. Have you
Mhm.
been there?
I've not, no, but
You need to go. You know the
sounds like
road where you go up to the courthouse?
yep.
Okay, that I can't think of the name of that road. That's not Bridge Street, is it? But anyway, the road. If you turn there, it's on your left,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
it's. Uh, I'm really good friends, like I said, Benita and Liberta uh, and James. They work hard to make that the most, and they're really trying to get the history of Clay County. Uh, and they're trying to get jobs and opportunities for the people. I think that's one of the problems. There's just nothing down there, you know.
Yeah. There's a lot of probably more history we could probably talk about of Clay County and your family, as well, but, Linda, we thank you for coming on and talking about, all this history,
Probably told you more than you wanted to know.
Uh, no, it's good. The more stories, the better. At one point, you said, you said, "I don't know if I'll tell you this story," or I was like, "Go ahead, let's hear it." Um,
But
but
I love Clay County,
mhm,
and when I get near it, it's like, even though I've lived here all these years,
mhm,
it's like I'm going home.
yeah,
When
yeah,
I get there and everything.
yeah,
But yeah, um, but a lot of my family, but a lot live in Hazard too. The
mhm,
Bagleys, there's a bunch of Bagleys
mhm,
that live over there and stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah.
to me, it's beautiful country.
It is. Yeah, I like it. Well, um, thanks again for coming on and sharing your stories. Anything else before we go?
I can't think of anything. I hope I haven't bored you too much.
No, 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 I have not. And we'll have to get you back on and talk more about Leslie County and whatever other Kentucky stories you got. So, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, bye bye.